The one thing I'm hoping is that I can get.
It houses all of the student information, food service that has a module, special education has a module, there's the financial aspect to it. There's some small ones in here, like the graduation requirements are tracked, fee tracking. There's a lot of components to it, but the total amount for the invoice is $73,000. So that's why it's on the agenda tonight. For the student services, this district has been using Skyward for quite a long time. So there's a lot of data in there. There's a lot of history there. I don't know if anyone has any questions about this renewal.
No, I mean, if we were to say no to it, that'll be a major issue.
They would halt all operations.
Yeah.
Right. You mind sharing your screen with Zoom?
I tried and it won't. I
Oh,
don't,
really?
it's not working. I'll try again.
We can move, but let's do it in a different fashion.
And say it's effectively sharing your screen, you just have nothing in the background behind the Zoom.
But why is that? Because I had board docs pulled up earlier. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties tonight.
So entire screen should be good enough, right? Can we switch to a Google Meet? Sorry.
I don't know why it won't share. It makes it really hard to follow the agenda there. But the second item on the purchases over $20,000 is the library purchase using common school funds for these light wall. I think it's at 3 different elementary schools. And we have Jason Bull online, and I think that he has a little bit more information about what this purchase entails. I don't know if I guess, let me pause for a second and just say, would it be helpful if I talked about common school funds itself first? Because it's kind of a separate pot of money from the general operating fund. So, the school districts get a set amount of money per student each year that can only be used on library purchases. And it's through a trust, and those funds are distributed every year in May. So it makes it a little bit challenging because we never know what the final amount is going to be until about May 1st. And then we're supposed to have those all spent by the end of June. So that's why we'll see a lot of library purchases come through this time of year. And this particular purchase, a single one is about $16,000. So when they're combined together, it's well over $20,000. That's why we have it on the agenda tonight. And so with that, I guess I'll see if Jason wants to add anything.
Thank you, Sarah. I guess the only couple things that I would add is that this year, earlier in the year, the library team presented a 2024 to 2027 future ready library plan at Ed Services, and then subsequently the board approved this plan. And one of the frameworks of the Future Ready Plan is the use of space and time. And with that in mind, our library team really wrote two goals that they've been working diligently towards and will continue to do so. And one of those goals is that the library media specialist team will work to transform WUSD libraries into dynamic, student-centered hubs that enhance learning by providing safe, welcoming, and flexible spaces, resulting in measurable increase of at least 15% in student usage and resource utilization over a 3-year period. And so the plan and that goal specifically led to conversations at the library media team level about things that they could do differently or better to engage and make those spaces exciting for students and staff and parents to be in. Last year, the middle school and the high school purchased similar boards to what these are being recommended here. These three are targeted for Douglas, Webster, and Schurz. They're boards that many students have used at both the middle school and high school. And as Sarah mentioned, certainly together they add up to more than 20,000, but individually they're under 20,000. The connective glue is the common school funds. And thank you.
Any questions?
I still kind of go back to like, I still don't understand the particular educational value behind this particular purchase. And, I don't know, do we normally as a course of process, do we have some sort of a wish list for common funds identified well in advance of some of those items that we can use or that we're interested in? And if so, what's next on that list? I mean, because this just seems to be like a big ask, and I'm just kind of concerned that we're not putting dollars to the best use possible for the educational benefit of our kids.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. What I would say is most definitely the library team has worked through the development of a list. I don't have that at the ready right now. But it's really a combination of things. First and foremost, it's governed by common school funds. And so, for example, furniture cannot be purchased. So that's unfortunate, but it's just where we're at. And so there's a list, and it's really, I see the list of two things. One is, how do we draw and engage our learners and staff and parents into that library? I think this purchase falls into that category. And the second category is really adding to the inventory within that library. And things, certainly books are high on that list. Other resources that are, I would say, more directly connected to learning are on that list. But this one is certainly connected to drawing, engaging, and having our libraries really transform into epicenters of learning and places where people want to be, hang out, learn, chat, collaborate, and be.
And just for context, we got $294,633 this year to spend. And if we don't spend those funds on library, you have to put them in like designated fund balance to be used for the library in the future. Which is okay. We already had 41,000 of carryover.
In between the three buildings, that's 45,000.
Yeah, I think all in it was
Roughly.
pretty close to 50.
50, okay.
I feel the same way that you do, Craig, but with the way that funding works for public school programs, I don't really know what else to do with it. I mean, we could buy $250,000 worth of books. That's a lot of books, though. We might have to rebuild the library or build on a new addition to it. That's a heck of a lot of books. Or a few really valuable ones, but I don't know if we wanna be holding on to
Yeah.
things that should be in the museum. I'm not sure.
I appreciate utilizing the funds.
Yeah.
But
That's a good
but I also look at it like, I, it sure be nice to be a little bit, I don't know. I'm struggling with this one. I really am. I'm not gonna lie. I just wish we had other ways to spend money that's very, very clear that it's going to be a net benefit to the educational, well-being of our children. And this one just seems to be like another, kind of media device that's going to be there just to entertain and not necessarily to educate.
Can I ask Jason, like, how are those libraries looked? Are they well furnished with other resources and materials, or are they lacking in some areas? I did see the plan and it goes through 2027, so I'm not implying that they don't intend to make further changes, but
Yeah, I would say that,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that I would say that, in the last years, really sparked by the team coming together on the Future Ready plan, that they have, elevated the, desire to transform those spaces into really places that are exciting and welcoming. And not that they weren't prior, but it's a newfound focus. And every element or every building is different, and every library is different. And I share the trepidation that I wish common school funds were more wide open. So I can share and appreciate that. But I would also say that the library team and the staff of these buildings are really working hard to have those libraries become places where kids want to go, and not that they haven't in the past, but there's multiple facets to having children want to go to the library, and books and resources and activities are certainly one thing, but also what are the things that draw and excite them, and that's where I see this fitting into that.
So basically, it's like a giant
It's a
library.
library, yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it's like a tactile play object.
And, they come with pattern books and everything else, just like a light bright did when you were a kid. That's exactly what it is.
And I believe there's different varieties. I believe these have pegs so students can put them in and out. So there's some tactileness to this. And again, it's part of the plan to really transform those places into spots with adults and students want to be and come and collaborate and learn and explore.
And I will tell you that, when I'm in the library at the middle school, when I'm in the library at the high school, there are kids using them all the time. Because we have one at the high school and one at the middle school already.
But are they learning? Do we want to be spending our time playing or learning? I mean,
I guess you do want some downtime for children in school, right, Craig?
sure.
And you'd rather it potentially maybe be working
Structured.
together to do the pegs than, I don't, like
Yeah.
staring blindly at the aisles in the library, I suppose. Like, I get the sentiment that you're saying, and I was feeling a little leery about this before walking in, but I was unaware that it was a common fund where it had to be spent on library materials, which necessarily does change the dynamic of those funds. I would be completely against it if Jason would say,
Hey, I want to use my building funds for what?
well, no, if Jason were to say the library material that is available right now is subpar and we just want this new technology. But if he's saying that they're largely up to snuff, you would say, right, Jason?
You know, if you walk into our public library now, there are places where students can learn and read and explore, and that's kind of the model, right? Like public libraries across the nation have really transformed their spaces into really welcoming of all ages, places where people can sit and learn quietly, but also spaces where they can explore and collaborate and work together, and that's kind of the vision. And so this really again matches that vision that the library team has crafted, and I think it's great work that they're doing.
You know, I had one thing, Chris.
Yeah.
So the one in the high school library is outside my office. And I don't know why it can't be fun and learning at the same time. What I see with it is the creativity. We have groups of students who are showing off their creativity, trying to come up with different designs, trying to figure out the math that it is, because it is a math board, to figure out a design, how many pixels will fit in that to come up with a design. And I'm just wondering if this was in an art classroom, as a way to show your creative designs within an art picture, would it be
And this is
so
about
different?
$50,000.
And it's just the fact that it's in a public space like the library.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's only 25%, less than 25% of the funds given to the district this year for library use,
Okay.
right?
Right. It's
So,
mostly carried.
and it's going to cover 3 of the elementary schools. And the funds can't be sanctioned to cover any other part of necessities in the district.
That is very accurate. Really governed or connected directly to the library and governed
I'm
by
not
many rules.
hold it up. I don't wanna hold it up. I'm just hoping that we're going to. I'd really be curious to know what that list looks like going forward in the future, so we can try to plan. For those kind of funds in the future, so that we can use make the best use of those dollars. And not on stuff like this. I mean, yeah, I get it. Well, let's get these kids in the libraries, get their interest peaked in being in the library. But the purpose of a library or media center is to learn, is to read, is to, find those types of resources, not to go in there to be babysat. So.
Yeah, to follow up on what you're saying, Craig, I agree. It's not something that I would want to hold this up about. However, I do think it's important to note that bringing someone into a space for a reason that is not related to the function of that space does not make it more likely that that space will be used for its intended function. They have a saying for this in the Christian world. They call them seeker sensitive churches, and they build playlands and coffee shops, and they have light shows and music festivals for people. It doesn't really make people integrate into the community. It'll bring a lot of people in, but the reality is that the core of the community, what the building and what that group is intended for, isn't really being utilized. And the more that we de-emphasize the actual purpose of a library, whether it's a public library or a private library, or a public school library, I should say, the more we de-emphasize the actual purpose of it, which is to gain wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, the worse our overall societal capacity for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is going to get. So that is definitely something that I agree with Craig on, that we should look into this much more thoroughly, and we should be making careful decisions to move forward with that. That being said, I mean, what are you gonna do? It's almost entirely being paid for by funds that were brought over from the previous year. So there's a couple of different factors going on there.
Any more, Craig?
No, that's it.
Anybody else?
So move to resolution? At the board?
Well, doesn't the whole board have to approve that?
Yeah, at the board
Yes,
meeting.
Right.
She's asking if we want to move it to a resolution for the board.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so the third purchase then over $20,000 is some hardscapes projects around the district, and I think Kevin Suko can speak to that.
So we're bringing, rehab of the Douglas Upper Playground area, forward for reconstruction. Just the quick hitters here, last time, we brought some seal coat projects to the board. Seal coating is the asphalt's in really good condition. The top coat's okay, the base is okay. We're doing a preventative maintenance to try to prolong that as long as possible. This situation, the asphalt is not in a condition that a seal coat is gonna allow us to, continue to provide that preventative maintenance services. There's some 4-inch cracks. We're getting a lot of water infiltration through the top surface. So when that happens, the best course is to rehab it. There's 2 different ways that we looked at this project. The first one is to mill off the finished course, which is about 1.75 to 2 inches, and then relay a new finished course on top of the existing base that's underneath there. The hard part about this one is we don't know what that base looks like underneath, right? So we're kind of taking a bet on that. What is there is going to be serviceable, or with some cut and fill and some light patching, we'll be able to make sure that that base is okay. And then we're laying a new course on top that will bring the surface plane and flush. The one that we did not bring forward, but all companies or the folks did look at, was a full depth reclamation. That's where they go down and they actually mill out all of the asphalt that's currently on the playground, the upper layer and the base course, get us back to rock, and then we would lay 2 courses of asphalt on top of that. Because this is a playground and not a parking lot or an area that sees a lot of vehicle traffic, I feel comfortable going with the mill and repave. The hazard or what could happen by doing this is if the base course has some cracks in it or has water infiltration happening, that could more quickly come back up through the top course and we could see it in future years. A good example of this would be the staff lot at the high school. They did a mill and pave project about 3 years ago, and you can already see some cracking in that asphalt. So, you know, if it was a parking lot, I'd probably be a lot more, I'd be coming here trying to say, hey, I think the more expensive option is the way to go. Because it's a playground, again, I still feel that full depth reclamation would give us the longest lasting product. But, to fit our budgetary needs, I feel that a mill and pave project would get us to the final goal of having a playground that's smooth, free of cracks, of major cracks, and something that we can maintain for the next 10 to 15 years to provide a good play surface. The other part of this project was, I don't know if you've seen or, been out at the playgrounds at the schools, but we have seas of asphalt. Just about every playground at Schurz and Douglas for sure are huge asphalt areas that are fenced in. The request from staff came to say, hey, we got kids that want to play football. They want to do some things that are a little bit more aggressive than like what you can do on an asphalt surface without getting knees bruised up and cut and things like that. So there was a request to take some of the asphalt out and return it to grass so that there'd be a soft play surface that also plays really well into stormwater collection and some issues, like the city is looking for any help we can get with stormwater. So by taking out about 5,000 square feet of asphalt and returning that to grass, we're kind of helping with stormwater retention as well as giving that soft area. And then what we do is move the current fencing a little bit closer to the parking lot to harness more of the grass area, give kids some more soft areas to play. And then a real final part to this project is at the entrance to Douglas, where the sidewalk that was built as part of the building meets the sidewalk that's coming up to the building that was done as part of like the site improvements. There's some settling that's occurring, so we do have about a 3/4 inch lip, which is outside of ADA requirements. So the company's also gonna grind that down so that we have a smooth transition between the 2 slabs as well. So there is an allowance requested that all companies carry a 10% allowance. What this would be for is we're milling off the layer and we find there is a 2-inch crack that goes from one corner of the parking lot to the other. In order to do it correctly, what we want to do is mill that crack out and then repave it in flat so that there's no chance for water infiltration to come back up. Again, this is a best guess based on what we're seeing from the top of the surface, not being able to see the bottom.
I figured that, 10% coming in around $7,000, which would be an allowance, not money that's given to the contractor. They have to come to us and say, hey, we peeled it off, this is what we're seeing, we wanna spend this money here to cut and fill this or patch this area. That would buy me about 2,000 square feet, I think it was, of patching and paving, which is 10% of the area that we're looking at. You know, I'm really optimistic when we mill it off, it's gonna be perfect and that's gonna be more money than we need. But, you know, it would put us in a place where we have some funds to take care of some of the issues in case we see them. Because what can't happen is we mill the parking lot off in July, and then I need to come back to the school board to request more money in August and hope that we have it paved, for school starting.
So in function, I still think, and I mentioned this last time, I still think that when you basically say, we like to ask for another 10% on allowance in an open meeting, that's probably a problem. That it's almost like you're negotiating with the vendor, because if they're paying attention to the meeting, they can say, well, you actually have some wiggle room in here, so I can cut into that a little bit. And I just think that's a closed session topic in general. I just think it just makes more sense to have that discussion in closed session. I don't know what the mechanism is that we need to utilize to make sure that we keep some of that stuff closer to the chest with those cards, but
So,
I think
just for clarity, you're looking at in the future, if we have bids for construction or whatever that carry a contingency, because all of them do. You'd like to have that in closed session as to the amount of the contingency?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, because what I'm hearing is the administration asking for an additional contingency. And
No, I don't think that's what he was.
No,
No,
in
it's
this
not.
case, this is something that I am telling that I am asking the contractors to carry and say, we're
He put
planning
it in
on
the
paying
bid
this
documents to carry that amount.
Yeah, so this was part of the bid, that
okay,
they carried 10% of their collective allowance. I'm not asking for a contingency because of the conversation we had last time, that
Yeah.
didn't feel like it was really supported. So this is a way that we have money built into the project for the unseen without having to come back and ask for that money once we pull it open and see it.
so
I'm making an educated guess that we're going to have some damage below the surface.
so basically what you're saying is you're baking it into the
Retarded people should be able to fuck. Look,
Well-
guys, I hate to break it to you, but you can't fuck retarded people. And it's bullshit. Because there's a retarded boy out there right now who wanna say, man, I'll fuck the shit out that bitch.
What's
Form
going
the
on?
words. And you got retarded bitches out there with some fat asses
What's going on
who
here?
could make a good wife, but they can't form the words. And since they can't speak, I speak for them. Now listen, if we have to pay taxes for retards in communities, then we should be able to fuck them. And guys, just imagine how good retarded sex would be. You got the twitchy ass hand.
What's going on here?
Sorry, not very fast on that.
I've never seen it before.
No, me neither.
We've had it happen at a couple different meetings. People come in and then they just, you know.
we got a lot of public meetings.
Yep.
So anyway,
Sorry.
so you're saying it's kind of baked into the situation. And is there any scenario where if that full amount is not used, that it gets turned back over to the district?
That's the understanding with the way that it was put out, that any allowance that's used has to be approved by the district before it's used. But we're holding it in their contract, in the agreement, that they would be able to spend up to that amount.
So basically, we're telling them, yeah, you can You can go above a little bit, if you need to.
Just because it's just like when you do work on your home, like if you get into a
Yeah.
wall, you're almost certainly going to find something you didn't expect. And I think that's what we're thinking. If we start to take some of this off, we're going to find something unexpected.
I know, but is that really a good strategy to try to keep a vendor within their bid?
That was a good person.
It was
Yeah.
the first one I kicked out on.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I think when you're doing any repairs, Craig, you should put aside money for incidentals.
And we do,
But you just don't want the person putting the bid in to be aware of that essentially.
right,
Right, okay.
that seems a little, yeah.
Can I ask a few questions about the proposals?
Yep.
Okay, so your recommendation is the base proposal,
Yes.
right, not the alternate.
Correct. There was, I apologize, there was one alternate. Alternate two is paving there's a path that winds down from the upper playground down to the lower playground. We're asking to include that milling and paving is done as well. In the capital maintenance plan for the next 10 years, you'll see that the lower playground is also up to be done, I want to say in 3 or 4 years, really in the same condition.
Okay,
And that was kind of an alternate on here because I wasn't sure which project we would include it in. So really what I did was throwing it out for pricing. And when I threw it out for pricing, it came back within the amount that we budgeted for the
Okay.
upper project. So I think this way I'm paying it now as opposed to having to do it when we redo the lower later.
okay, so the difference in the price, well, it's a lot, it's not a lot, right? So let's say things don't go as expected when they started to pull it up with proposal one. And we still follow through, right, because that's what was approved. When are we gonna have to consider repaving in the future? What would the time frame be? Now, I understand at the high school, it would be substantially more escalated because the cars are done. But in like this, where it's just a playground, at what point, if this choice repair does not work as anticipated, would we have to have this discussion again in the board that we need a repaving or a full in-depth milling? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Usually, the goal is to return the base layer to as good a condition as possible, so that in the perfect world scenario, perfect case, this is gonna be the same outcome as if we pulled everything up and repaved it. We're just being smart and saving because we're using what's there.
Okay,
In the not perfect world, if it's absolutely trashed, so we pull it up and there's no asphalt underneath there, they only pave 2 inches and the rest is rock. I know that's not true because we dug down, but if that was the case,
okay,
I would not push forward with a project that's gonna go to be junk in 5 years. We would pause, we would come back and say,
okay,
we need to look at it. With a mill and repave with some defects in the bottom, usually what they say is it's 10 to 15 years. With a mill and repave, and with a full depth reclamation and paving, usually you're within like 20 to 30 years. That again, plans on having preventative maintenance done every 3 to 5 years with a seal coat and that kind of stuff done.
okay.
I got a question in reference to the open area. You said 5,000 square feet?
Yep.
Are you gonna sod it or are you gonna seed it?
Seed.
You're gonna seed it.
Yep, that's.
And you're gonna do it, you're gonna do that yourself. The school district's gonna do that.
Nope, that's part of the contract is to have the contractor, when they pull out the asphalt from the base, they will put dirt in. When they put the dirt in, they will seed it and they will do the initial watering. Then we take over the maintenance after that.
Okay. You haven't got any gentlemen that know how to do that otherwise?
Oh, we definitely could do it, but we're going to have to bring in a landscaper to do part of the reclamation for where they pull out around the base and where they, like, around the edges anyway. So to me, I'm trying to harness the equipment and the labor already on site to do the rest of the job.
Okay,
And that gives me somebody to go back on. If it grows in weedy or doesn't grow in right, we can go back and say,
I understand that point.
I will clarify my concern from earlier. I'd much rather have a discussion about, hey, let's give the administration a 10% leeway to make that discretionary, decision. Than to just bake it in and, telegraph them. I guess I think that would be more fiscally responsible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree. Would that be something where we would just do, like, if we're gonna be talking about bids, we have closed session, or we have a closed session segment where.
Yeah.
Any bids that we think we would need to carry over a contingency for. There are some bids that, you don't really need to do that, but.
If you did the full depth milling, would you stay within your budget for this year, or would that exceed your budget? to the limit?
So the budget is for next year, it's proposed, I mean, we haven't approved it
Yeah.
or anything like that yet. It would have been over by about $2,000, including alternate 1, alternate 2, and the allowance for alternate 1. I like where you're going, I'm not gonna lie.
I'm just saying, if we're thinking about money and long-term, right, you should run a school district like it's never going to close, so we would get more bang for our buck, and inflation is going to show in 10 to 15 years, we're not going to get a option 1 for $76,000. This is just what I'm thinking. If we're thinking fiscally responsibly, even though it costs more upfront, it might be better for the district to have the security for up to 30 years instead of 10 to 15 years. That's just my opinion on the matter.
Anything else? Greg?
Well. So it would be preferred to have alternate number 1. By the staff,
Yes, I can say that.
but I think what I heard Tammy say is that. The number 1 proposal, base proposal, more or less is. Would you feel it would be a little bit more financially?
I think alternate 1 would be financially wiser for the district because you have a longer life on that. And one would assume that costs are going to go up within the next 20 to 30 years. So we're not gonna get a repaving for 96. I'm assuming at that point, 10 to 15 years from now, there will not be an option 1 available at Douglas, right? The base proposal, that will be a non-option.
Yeah,
So we're probably looking at something well over $100,000 to get a whole within 10 to 15 years. It's going, I don't see costs going down. Is what I'm saying.
I see, but what we don't see in, oh, never mind. Yeah, you're right. I'm kind of leaning towards that.
I mean, if it was double, I would be like, okay, let's just, but the numbers are close enough where it might be more fiscally responsible to just replace it now before we have more financial worries we need to deal with in the future.
It also eliminates a little bit more of the unknown variable because we're not relying on a base course that we can't see.
And you said, it would only take you over by about $2,000, right?
Yep, in the 10-year plan, we estimated, 110,000 for this project. If we do accept the alternate 1 and alternate 2, the total came to about 113 with PLM as the load.
Any other discussion? I will take that to the board too.
Which decision are we making?
Yeah, you guys have to
Oh.
decide, Carl. You and Craig have to decide which one's going to the board.
And I believe Charity's on.
Okay, yes, and Charity.
Oh, she's on?
I believe so.
Okay. Charity, can you hear me?
I can, friend.
Okay, what do you think?
I agree with Tammy. I think doing it long term and doing it right the first time is going to be more advantageous in the long run.
Appreciate your input. I think Greg, I think that's number 1 would be the idea.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah, so is it, if I'm understanding what I'm reading here, it's, the decision is for the base proposal, right?
Mm,
And then
So what,
Alternate 2 or alternate 1?
what my recommendation that brought forth was the base proposal and alternate 2, the base proposal, the allowance for the base proposal and alternate 2. And that was the 89,000.
Okay, I see.
If we went with alternate one allowance and alternate 2. I actually created a SIP report with this one as well. So I'm trying to find the
And
exact-
Tammy and Charity are suggesting alternate one allowance and alternate 2. Is that correct, Tim
Yes.
and Charity?
So the 113,000.
Yeah, it would be 3,000 over the budget, but it would. I mean, it would be better for the district in the long run, Craig. What happens if it doesn't work as planned with base proposal? And within the next 3 to 5 years, we have to have this conversation about putting in alternate 1 because we have no other options available to us.
Going that deep without.
I will also share that, none of our long range, fiscal planning has us, leaving Douglas anytime soon.
Okay. I appreciate that. All right. Yeah, I'll support that.
So the exact cost for alternate 1, alternate 2. And the allowance for alternate 1 would be $111,990.
So I would move to accept the recommendation to not exceed the $111,091.
$111,990.
That,
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll take that to the board.
All right.
Next thing, Sarah.
Next thing is, last month, this committee took a look at a food service survey for parents. And that went out, last week, and Friday is the last day for submission. And now tonight, we're looking at 2 different surveys for students, one for grades 3 to 5 and one for grades 6 to 12. And we have Sheila Price here tonight to answer any questions that you may have about the surveys.
I'd like to make a comment. I like your surveys. I think they're spot on. Is there anything else to add? I think it's important to gather feedback from the students. You know, you're probably not gonna always hear what you wanna hear, but I mean, if at least you have a feeling of where they're at, I mean, maybe they can inform some decisions going forward in the future.
And I never want to assume to know what,
Right.
you know, what the consensus is out there. I have my own thoughts, but it may not translate into what the students and the parents expect. So.
Sheila, it's Charity. I just have a quick question. After the surveys for the parents and the students are done, is there any kind of campaign that goes out in communication to say, we've heard you and here are some of the considerations that we have going forward, just to close the loop with each of those communities?
Any conversation around that at this point, but I think that's a great idea. I can work with Sarah and Melissa Lampe to come up with a plan to do that.
Thanks, friend. I know that in my prior life, having worked in contracted food service, that we heard you aspect is incredibly important to our community. So thank you.
I would second that. I mean, I know that, I think a lot of times when we talk about survey fatigue within our school district, sometimes you don't really want people to get this impression that why am I doing this? Nothing seems to change, but at least we've heard you. That sort of thing is important.
Anything else on that?
That one doesn't have to go to resolution,
No.
but we will, then work on getting that sent out, and we're working with building leaders to see if maybe we can find a little time for some of the kids to do it as well. The next thing on the agenda is student fees and meal prices for next school year. We look at these every year. And so I have a draft in the agenda, and you can see the only thing that we're proposing changing, there's a couple changes on here. Either just scroll. The first one is the yearbook fee at the high school. So they've been running at a little bit of a loss the last couple of years, and so they're just proposing a $5 increase to cover costs, so that they're not running at a deficit. And then the other increases are all relating to food service. And there is a 15% or 15-cent increase to all student meals, and then a little bit of a larger increase for adult meals. I don't know if we have questions. Oh, and also milk is proposed to go up 5. And I mean, I think part of that is we just are seeing costs go up every year. Food prices keep going up. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, that 15-cent increase was based on kind of prediction of about a 3.5% food cost increase.
Mm-hmm.
We do have the option, I'll just mention, like the memo stated, because we do have a fund balance
Okay.
in food service, we're not required to increase meals. We have the option to exempt out of raising prices, but that's not typically been what the board prefers to do. And I can say I probably agree with that in the sense that once you kind of will down that fund balance, you don't want to create sticker shock with all of a sudden you're having to raise by 50 cents, 75 cents, which can be really, really problematic for families to afford potentially.
Are you digging into the fund balance currently periodically, or is it?
Oh, we're working, we have to, because
Yeah.
we're carrying more than the 3 months operating expenses. So
Okay.
we're working on spend down plan for equipment purchases, things of that nature,
Okay,
is part of that.
okay,
Major equipment repairs too.
yeah, like the fridge we talked about.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm generally supportive of, making price adjustments as you need to, and on a gradual basis that people can understand with given the rate of inflation. And, yet you still have a bit of a cushion in case something happens.
Is there any concern about the NSLP reimbursement, whether it be at the current rate or the higher rate for next year?
Not so far, I don't.
I have not heard any chatter about potential decreases, stagnation. Having said that, we'll know fairly soon. Those new guidelines come out every year on or around July 1st.
Thank you.
The only other comment I'd make about the fees in general, I don't wanna assume, because we know nothing good happens there. But, when it comes to extracurricular, activities for like the middle school and the high school, it says a family maximum is 105 at the, middle school. And a family maximum at the high school is 225. But what if you happen to have a family that happens to share, has students at both? Could we maybe give them a bit of a break and say, we would offer both middle school and the family maximum and set that at like, I don't know, I'm just pulling a number out of my head, but like 275, or
Maybe make a
250.
family maximum no matter where your kids
Yeah,
are. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good idea, actually. Would you want me to change that and add that for this year?
I mean, you know, if you got a family that's in both activities, they're already getting hammered with expenses. I mean, I'd rather have them feel comfortable participating and not have to break the ink on it, because you know, when they go to away games, they're gonna be nailed with a bunch of fees also.
High school boards have like a district maximum, like it doesn't matter where your child goes to school if you reach this.
Right. I don't know, what do you think, Jared?
I'm here to respond to your guys' need. I mean, you know our families. I've seen it done all sorts of ways. So if that's what you think is good, then you do that. Some school districts just flat out don't charge fees. I mean, except for lunch fees, right? So yeah, I mean, you guys can decide to do whatever you want to do. Fees definitely help make up you know, some revenue for us, but they can also you know, catch us in other ways on the back end when we collect the fee. And so like I really leave it up to you guys and Sarah more as to say how do you want to handle that.
I'd be almost tempted to say if you have a high schooler and you still have middle schoolers in sports, that to encourage them to continue to play, you know, just charge the $225 maximum and allow that to carry over to a middle school. I don't know how many kids that would affect and what kind of revenue impact that would make. But
So you're saying like a one-time family fee, not an annual?
like an annual fee, but leave it at the 225 maximum for both high school, yeah, for that family, for both high school and middle school.
But if they just have a child in middle school, it would go back to the $105, or are we now increasing the middle?
Well, here's my question, because the activity fee is only $35. Let's say I have two middle schoolers, right? The 225 family maximum is still well above that for a $35 fee, right? And that's why we give a break on the family fee at the middle school, because the student fee itself is so much lower. You know, but I can see, like, if you have, you know, a high schooler and a middle schooler and you're trying to say, well, where's the difference in between? And
yeah,
Not that you have this off the top of your head, but like what percentage of our revenue is connected to extracurricular activity fees?
It's very small overall. Percentage wise, it's very small.
Okay.
Enlighten me. Are we talking the kids that go out for sports have to pay money to go out?
yeah, they have to pay a fee, and that fee is for basically equipment that, you know, gets utilized and can't be
I
reused.
completely understand, and at our meeting, we'll talk more about this.
Yeah.
Very good.
I mean, that's why I said some school districts don't.
Yeah, I
You know,
understand.
they think
I
it's a
understand.
regressive tax on the family and.
I understand.
That kind of stuff, but.
So maybe, are you thinking add something like no family should exceed $225 total or something like that?
yeah, something like that, but I don't know. I'd really like to know what the revenue impact would be if we could at all figure that out.
Yeah, we could, and if we actually, in a document later, I have the revenue percentages, there's a pie chart.
And I apologize for not bringing that.
And that's okay, I don't have that piece of it broken out, but like everything, all student fees, all of everything we collect, fines, fees, refunds, miscellaneous revenue, all of that is a little bit less than $2 million a year. So I mean, percentage wise, it's small. No, for the whole district.
Yeah, but yet it could still make a pretty big significant impact in the sense that, like, hey, families can come here and participate in more sports, and they get their family. We're not gonna nail you because you have a big family type of deal. I don't know.
Take it to the board.
Okay.
How about that? And at the board
with a discussion point on.
Right. Exactly,
extracurricular fees.
right.
And-
So let the
and-
board decide,
Right, and what would the board want for a family maximum?
right?
All right, next up, we have Chromebook purchase for next year. This was originally on our planning calendar for June. Because of the tariffs and what we think probably our price increase is coming, we moved this up just a month. And so Dave is here to talk a little bit more about Chromebooks, and I think we still have Jason online as well, so.
Yeah, I think Jason's gonna start.
Yes, thank you. I always like to start with gratitude, so I want to thank the members of the board for your continued support of this work. I also want to thank Dave Lockstein and the entire tech team. They've worked hard to develop systems that support teaching and learning, and certainly integral the technology. And the Chromebook rotation that really leads us here today is just one of the systems that they have developed. So thank you. Just important to note here that I think we're in year like 2.5, maybe closer to 3 of a Chromebook rotational plan that has been developed again with Dave Lockstein's leadership and the entire tech team. And this plan has really been executed in a way that supports teaching, supports learning, and good fiscal stewardship. And for the last 2 years, this plan has been shared really through 2 committees. We've shared this at Ed Services to ensure that they have an understanding of the impact of the Chromebooks and where they fit into our strategic plan and our work as a technology team to support teaching and learning. And then subsequently, we bring it to Fiscal to finalize the purchase before we move forward. And so this year is no different. This idea and plan and this Chromebook rotation has been presented at Ed Services earlier this school year. And now we're in a spot where we have secured 3 quotes and looking for conversations around the purchase of these Chromebooks for staff and students. Dave has put together why, what, and how. We always want to be grounded in our why, what, and how. And I'd like to turn it over to Dave to briefly cover that why, what, and how, and then we'll open it up to any questions, please.
Sure. Thank you, Jason. Again, thank you for having me. As Jason said, this is my third year in a row of coming to you at the fiscal committee to talk about this plan. And our goal is to supply the students with what they need while being fiscally responsible. And my goal, and I've been doing this for 20 years, my goal has always been to be able to come to the board every year with a very similar number to know that this is how much we're going to spend every year. In past, we've do a lot of roller coaster where you're buying a lot one year and then not so much the next couple of years, and then you have to find the money to be able to buy a lot again, and really wanted to move away from that. So that's why we're coming to you with the plan to supply 3 grade levels with Chromebooks, plus approximately 15 to 20% to accommodate new students, transfer-ins, and so on. And then I have it right. And then 100 staff computers, which with that rotation, we stepped that up a little bit this year. One, because our quote or our projected quote was lower than what we had last year, with what we spent last year. As well, we have some Dells that we purchased in during COVID that the staff are using that are starting to die, and we don't think they're going to make another year. So would like to purchase a few more staff devices this year. We expect that staff devices are going to last 5 years. And actually a great example is all the board have the exact same staff device that the staff have. So we are retiring 400 devices this year. As I said, we've been with this 3-year plan, we're working on getting to where we know how many we're purchasing every year based on enrollment. The year that I started, our budget was already essentially gone, so we did not purchase any Chromebooks in 2022. And 2 years prior, we bought over 1,000 Chromebooks. So the reason why we're doing the 3 grade levels and why we're only retiring 400 Chromebooks is because that's all we purchased that are now coming end of life. In 2 years, we're gonna have 1,000 Chromebooks that are gonna come end of life, but thankfully, we're doing the 3 grade levels. We are able to absorb that loss of that many devices and still continue with our plan. So if that makes sense.
What do you do with the retired devices?
So so we are an ASUS warranty shop, so that's why the quote is ASUS. That's why you all have ASUS to make it so we can repair our own devices. So elementary, the devices are in the students' hands 5 years. Now, we understand kindergarten, they use them much less than 4th grade,
Yeah,
right? And then the curriculum is generally built where it increases slowly as they get older, right? And a lot of curriculums are starting to really look at that data and focus on that screen time. So those devices we feel are comfortable 5 years. And then 4 years with middle school, 4 years with high school. Then the best Chromebooks we take out of rotation and we set those up as classroom loaners. So we put a couple of Chromebooks in every single classroom for the students that take them home. So middle school, high school. So
Okay.
when a student comes in, forgot to charge their Chromebook, forgot it at home or whatever, there's at least a Chromebook so that they can follow along and at least be able to do their work in the classroom without having to go down to my office or the library to get a loaner. It's been a great while. It's been working fabulous for us. So 5-year-old Chromebooks are essentially in the classrooms as loaners.
Okay.
6 years, they're getting pretty well done. I mean, even though Google says we can go much longer with the licensing, they're pretty ragged. So we take those apart. We have student help desk students as well as our team, and we take all those apart and so that we have screens, we have keyboards, we have parts. So when a student breaks a Chromebook, accidentally breaks a screen or whatever, we don't charge the family for an accident because they can come in and we have parts from older Chromebooks that we retired to replace those screens, keeping our parts costs significantly lower than most school districts. So our parts cost for this year was about $5,000. And the only reason why that is because we switched to ASUS about 3 years ago. Or this will be the 3rd year. So 2 years ago, we had a lot of Dells, Lenovo's and HPs prior to that. So, and those monitors, those screens don't fit the ASUS.
Okay.
But in 2 more years, when we start recycling, when we start end lifing these ASUS ones, then we're gonna have, 750 screens to essentially be able to pull out, which we have nowhere near that breakage. We're at less than 5%, which honestly is awesome for a school district. I have school districts similar to ours that are complaining about 10, 15, 25% breakage. So we've been really blessed with that. But then because we have our own parts, it really keeps our costs low. So that's it. So it's in the students' hands for 4 years, 5 for elementary, 5th year in this classroom as loaners, 6th year becomes a parts machine, and then we recycle whatever is left after we take our parts.
Okay, so you don't have like a room full of old Chromebooks just.
We've got room full of parts.
We have a room full of parts. Yep, exactly. Yep.
This is Charity. I just have a question. Can you help me understand? I noticed the difference between the two was that 250 of them are the flip hinge and 500 are not. What's the rationale or advantage to that given the cost differential?
Sure. So for the ones that we proposed to go into kindergarten, and that's what we did last year, is we started with kindergarten. They're touch screens. So instead of just standard regular screens, so that adds just let's see, that adds approximately let's see on that quote, almost $100. But the feedback from the teaching staff is that at the younger grades, because managing the keyboard, starting with a touchscreen, and one of our schools, we have iPads that we're transitioning out and soon to be recycling. The touchscreens, they feel that the student gets a much better experience.
Let's do.
And because we're buying 3 grade levels, buying the touchscreen for the kindergarten and having that follow up through 4th grade, we have had examples, or we've had teachers even in the higher grades, 2nd and 3rd grade, request the touchscreens for certain kids that are struggling with the keyboard. So for us, this just feels like it's gonna be a natural move to be able to have essentially all elementary students, once we get fully through. So another 2 years, we will essentially have all touchscreens for K through 4. And then the motor skills and all that will be accessible for all students at that level.
Makes sense, Ron. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Any other discussion?
I have no objection to, moving forward with the Chromebook purchase, recommendation as written.
So my recommendation is for Insights. That quote is good until I think June 10th, somewhere along that. So that's why we have to bring it to the board. Again, it's availability. They are worried that if we don't jump on it, we're in line with all the other school districts in the nation that are trying to buy Chromebooks right now. So if we don't jump on it, we of course go to the back of the line and we might get Terra Chromebooks, we might not get them, depending on how that national stuff works. What they said with this quote is they guarantee the amount that we want. After that date, we no longer guarantee it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So we move it to the board, right?
Right.
Thank you.
And the next item on the agenda is the operational referendum debrief. We had this on the agenda last month and we ran out of time. So I put the same documents in again for this month so we can discuss those. The first thing that I was going to talk about a little bit is the one that says referendum flyer. This was provided to us by Baird, which is the financial group that helps. They help us do a lot of different things, including like if we were ever to get bonds, and then they help us price out referendum costs. So they follow these referendums very carefully. This just gives us a breakdown of the last election and what passed and what failed. The overall passage rate for referendums in April was 56%. You can see for recurring referendums, there were only 5 on the ballot, and of those 5, only 1 passed. So those had the lowest passage rates of all of them. The other thing that's interesting, I think, is that of all the referendums that were on the ballot, 40% of them were retries. So they were either the second or the third time through. That was 36 of 94 of the questions. And then if we look down a little bit farther, it gives the history of referendums passing and failing, going all the way back to 2021. So I think it's helpful to see kind of where we are. I think that for a while, the passage rate was really high. It's still over 50%, but it has been getting smaller. So that seems to be the trend right now. Any questions or comments about that?
How many that were retries? Where was that number?
I just found it myself. It's not on here,
Okay.
but there was 94 questions and 36 of them were retries.
36 of them were retries, and how many of those were successful?
I don't know for sure. I was wondering that myself. I could probably find out, but I don't know off the top of my head. I know a couple of districts even kind of close to us have tried operational referendums now 2 and 3 times and not passed.
Okay.
So then the other 2 documents in here kind of go together. The document that's labeled budget notes explains what all goes into the projections that are loaded into the agenda under the administrative section. So for people who have been on the committee before, we've gone through this document multiple times, but for everybody who's new, the document gives all the assumptions that are built into the projections. So for this next school year, we're waiting for the state to pass their budget to really know for sure what's going to be in there. So we're making a lot of educated guesses. So for these projections, we're keeping the per pupil categorical aid at $742 a student. We're keeping equalization aid at the same rate as $24.25. We're adding in that increase on the revenue limit per pupil of $325 a student, or FTE, not a student. We're keeping the special education reimbursement rate at 33%, which really, because that's like a set pot of money, we really see somewhere between 26 and 28. We haven't seen the full 33. We're assuming that enrollment will continue to decline. We're still using that cohort survival method to project student enrollment for the purposes of the forecasting. Summer school, we just kept it the same number of FTEs, and we kept open enrollment about the same too. Private school tuition vouchers, we know that the overall amount of vouchers will go up by 1% again. And so I'm increasing that by 10%. Overall property values, I just increased by 1% overall, which is probably a conservative estimate. But they have been increasing rapidly over the last 3 years, especially last year was close to 18% in the district overall. We have budgeted the full CPI wage increase of 2.95%. We have not bargained yet. And then we're estimating health insurance to go up by 10% and dental insurance to go up by 3%. We'll be getting those numbers, the actuals here in the upcoming, probably next 3 months or so. So we will know those numbers for sure. We are projecting a deficit again for 2025-26, and we're projecting that we will need to use fund balance to balance the budget. We have been talking about for months that we were going to reduce the budget by $1.5 million over the next 3 years, whether a referendum passed or not. When the referendum did not pass, we really started digging in and we were able to find more reductions. So at the time of me writing this, it was 808,000, but by the time the budget is going to be ready to present, it will be closer to $1 million in reductions that we've found for 2025-26. So those are all the assumptions in the forecast when we look at it. As we're planning next year's budget, I kind of have already touched on this, but there's a lot at the state level we still don't know. We're waiting on, there's been lots of things proposed and it's hard to say what will really happen there. And then at the federal level, there has also been quite a bit, like lots of people thinking one thing would be removed and one thing would not. We still have some uncertainty there, but it does seem right now, like it seems like Title I is going to remain. Seems like IDEA is going to remain, and those are our two largest federal revenues aside from food service. So that's good. The other titles are less certain. We are also for next year anticipating a one-time revenue from the closure of TID 4, and that's about $1.2 million, which will help. And then as we're building the budget, like I said before, we know that we will have some cost increases that are just natural. So employee wages, whatever raise the board gives, employee benefits will go up, transportation will go up, vouchers will go up, utilities will go up. But we are planning on making those reductions. And so in summary, for next year, we're proposing continuing to develop this budget with that nearly $1 million in reductions. And then in the years after that, we're going to start planning, and this committee, are we looking at going to referendum again? And to what level are we reducing the budget in future years? Right now, when we look at it, we're thinking that what we would need to do is in 2026-27, make a reduction of about $4.5 million, and then make that same amount of reduction the following year to balance the budget. So that's what we're looking at right now. And then if you look at the projection itself, I think it kind of supports what we're talking about. So the top, there's two projections. The top projection shows all of those assumptions we talked about without reductions. And the bottom one shows all of those assumptions and then the $4.5 million reduction in 26-27 and again in 27-28. And what I always like to say, people probably get sick of me saying this, but the forecast is like the weather forecast. Like in next year, it's pretty clear. As it goes out farther, it gets a little bit harder to really say because so many things change. So when we still are seeing red, that isn't necessarily like a scary thing here. Other things will change. And depending on where reductions are made, it impacts years after as well. So staffing reductions definitely change years after, more than just that dollar amount, kind of compounds. So I said a lot. I don't know if there that's
One thing I heard from the department and from AASA, which is the school alliance, for our federal level. Is that, Wisconsin's poverty rate is not increasing at the rate of a number of other states. And because title dollars are funded by need, we probably will see a downward trend in the amount of dollars coming into the state, which means a downward trend in what we're seeing. They don't have yet for us anything modeled for what might happen, but we should start thinking about revising our numbers downward, even in the title that we expect, and we only really expect Title I and possibly some Title III funds. The Title II and IV are probably not going to be available to us. So not only are we not gonna have Title II and IV, but Title I and III, we're gonna see it revised downward probably. Because that money will be directed to other states whose poverty went up faster than ours.
Have you estimated how much money that is?
No, they haven't modeled it yet. They don't know exactly because they also don't know how much the Fed is going to put into that bucket.
And when should we get an answer on that?
Well,
Hard to say.
the president just put forward their, the budget, right? And that'll get worked through a number of different committees and everything else that it goes through at the federal level. And then from there, it'll go into the departments, right? And then the departments will share out what they had with their priorities within that budget. And so we're probably gonna look at it another 3 or 4 months before we really start hearing some of the modeled numbers for our title.
What did we get last year?
We got just over $600,000.
And you're saying that's gonna get cut drastically.
A good portion of it. Yeah. I mean, Title I is our biggest amount that we get, but even if that was revising downward, we're trouble. It's good that they didn't say that one's taken off, at least at this time.
Right.
So, but will we still be required to provide the Title I services for parochial students if those funds are not available?
Yeah, I mean, the law hasn't changed, right?
Right.
But that they will be getting less service as well. You know,
Okay.
I mean, if we have fewer dollars, their share of those dollars.
But will impact.
It will impact them as well.
Sure. So the scenario one that you provide, was that, are we looking at doing something similar if we decide to try to move forward, make a decision moving forward with a referendum, that we're going to communicate out that we're baking in a $4.5 million reduction at that point, or?
That will depend on the level of which you as a board want to do your ask at.
Right.
And certainly, Sarah and I can start and already have started thinking about what would that look like.
Okay.
Right? The biggest amount of information that we heard from you as well as the community is that the bigger part of the no was the recurring portion. Right. And so to take that out, we may garner some votes. But also I do think that there was some hesitancy on the amount as well. And so we will have to figure out what that is, how we structure that over the course of a number of years, and then decide what that impact on what we think the TID is going to be. Or, I mean, not TID. I just read TID up there. I'm sorry. The tax might be for the mill rate. So, and then say, is this something that you support? So, over the next 2 or 3 months, we're going to be doing some heavy modeling. We're going to be coming back to this committee and saying, here's some looks at that. I work closely with board leadership on instead of an every month basis, every couple of weeks basis. As I'm talking with Sarah, we're talking about what the budget looks like, what you can expect on the budget front. And then also when we start getting heavier into the modeling, we'll be starting to talk about that at the modeling level, just to inform, right?
Right.
And say, here's where we are with our work product so far. But that really just depends on you. Whatever we do, you can see that, is just gonna buy us time before another ask comes. Unless the state really changes what they do for funding schools. Right, I mean, because you can even see when we do a $4.5 million, right, and another 4.5, you still get to red when you get out there. Right, I mean, that's cutting $9 million more out and $800,000 in that model this year. Right,
Yeah, because if you look at the revenue line, as things stand right now, the revenue stays almost the same every year. Like all these expenses that we really can't control, just make the red get bigger every year.
Yeah, I think if you do a non-recurring referendum, and I think that if we continue to work to make sure that the goings on of the district are reflective of the values and desires of the people of Watertown, I think that we're going to see people warm up to the idea considerably. But I mean, I know from everyone I talked to, the recurring thing was, I don't want to give a permanent increase. That makes me very uncomfortable. And I've seen a lot of things that I'm displeased with insofar as cultural and political things that go on, particularly some previous actions of school board that people thought were poor. So, I mean, I don't know if this is really the place to get in depth in that discussion, but that's certainly.
we have to do that sometime in this agenda, so.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is what we're here to talk about is, the referendum, how it went, feedback and any other discussion points, so. It's very valid to have those discussions now. I mean, as well as, some of the kinds of things you're looking for, when we move away from a recurring, and you can see why we asked for it. I mean, that state model or state funding formula, right? It just doesn't do justice with increases unless the state really ups how much they put in each year, right? So if we don't do a recurring, and I don't think we're going to, I wouldn't even recommend it myself. The next best thing is to go for a number of years. My question is that 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? The last time we did a sunsetting, it was a 5-year, right? And that seemed to have passed.
Is that the maximum time?
No, it's not the maximum time. There is some, a bill in the legislature that's not getting much traction that would put a cap at a 4-year. And then also make recurring just something you can't do. But it's not getting much traction right now. But if you're looking at what are other people thinking out there, I can at least share with you that there's a bill out there that looks kind of like that.
Okay.
But I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, and certainly, I mean, whatever you say today doesn't mean what we have to end up with. It's just, it just gives us a path to start doing some modeling for you to see what that looks like.
Yeah. I guess I would be curious to see how, if we did like a non-reoccurring and there was a sunset of, I don't even know if it's possible, but 8 years. Is that even?
It's been done.
Yeah, you can do.
And just to see what that looks like.
What's the expense to get a school to referendum? Like, what are we paying up front to, the marketing, getting on a ballot, like.
Yeah, it kind of depends how much we want to do. I think this last time around, we had a budget of 20,000. I don't think we hit the 20,000 mark.
We did, if you count Donovan Group into that.
That's true, Donovan.
Piece, but it was just barely over that with Donovan Group.
Yeah, so that's probably a pretty good number, is to say about $20,000.
And that doesn't really matter how long the referendum is, because it's just an expense you need to get messaging out to the community.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, you have to incur costs.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right, yeah.
But that doesn't also.
I'm just saying, if you were gonna say it's like something $200,000, then maybe a 3-year referendum wouldn't be the best choice, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Well, and honestly, a 3-year referendum, for all that you put into, doing a referendum and, all of the opportunity costs of, administrative time, everything else, right? Yeah, the longer you can go, the more you can kind of secure that recovery or take that recovery over those number of years, right? Of all of that, so,
I mean, I totally get that. I think though that a lot of constituents are concerned about the dynamics of the city, which you have no
yeah,
control over, right?
I
But
agree, yep.
like, just the way that the city's expenses seem to be going up, they're not only concerned about the expense increase for a referendum, right? Right now, the water's gonna be going up soon. Who knows what's gonna happen with the developments that's going on in the city and how that's going to affect.
Well, here's where I'll say, if Senator Jaguar or, you know, Assemblyman Penterman are listening, I will say it one more time. Schools, cities and counties need more fair share of the state dollars.
Yes, yes.
What was the community sentiment on the amount? Just curious, because generally when you go to referendum, you fail, because now you're trying to make that up. The next time you go, you're asking for more, because that's generally what happens when you fail a referendum.
From what I heard, $7 million is hard to swallow. Year over year.
Right.
But I don't know, I will say I don't know if it was hard to swallow because it was coming from an indefinite standpoint, you know. Or if it's because of the hard number. And there seemed to be some confusion on what that amount actually was, not for me, from my perspective, but just on some of the messaging that went out from the district, not saying that you didn't. People were unsure what exactly they were asking for, and it could have really been lack of community involvement to actually be aware of what the district was messaging. Do you know what I'm?
Question, was it true that we were gonna lose 60 teaching jobs?
It is true, if we don't pass, we're going to have 60 to 80 staff members, that we're gonna be looking to, reduce staffing by. And it's not just teachers, it's administration.
Okay, but it's not just teachers, it's other staff.
No, it's administration, it's support staff, it's cooks, cleaners, maintenance people, you know.
Well, there was miscommunication there, because the way I understood it, that they were gonna lose 60 teachers because of it. You know, that's the impression I got.
Yeah, well, I kept saying 60 to 80 staff members
Yeah.
in every presentation, so. I know.
I understand that. I completely understand that. I understand how a word can get changed real quick down the chain of command.
True, yeah. So.
I will say one thing that I think needs to be clear. If we go to referendum again and the board votes for it, is that the building plan and the closures or whatever.
Yeah.
They need to understand that that's not connected to the operational referendum, right? Like, I feel like that was a really large misunderstanding by the community.
Yeah, it is, and I think that as long as we continue to stay on our plan, what I mean by that is our plan to create a long-term facilities plan, right? As long as we stay on that plan through the summer with PRA and Cullen, we will have a much better idea of what we're looking at for a facilities plan in August.
Okay.
Right? And you know, some people have mentioned that they wish we would bring everything to the table. I know, like Mr. Stan Martin has said in a post out there somewhere, you know, that he's worried that there's this other secret happening. And, you know, it's been no secret. We've had posted meetings that we do have some facilities maintenance requests. So he is right. There is another ask out there to repair our facilities and to maybe change buildings or whatever else. The problem is we couldn't communicate that because we didn't have a finished plan.
Yes.
Right? And that's where people were getting confused. This time around, should we have something that we're going into April with, by about August or September, and certainly by November or December, when we put a question out there, right? We will know not only what that question is and what the cuts are going to be, because we're gonna work hard to identify those for everybody. And matter of fact, we're gonna put a letter out in the next week here that says, here's the things we're thinking about right now.
Okay.
Right? And that we'll have a finalized plan for you guys, and we said, something like, I think in the letter it's like fall, right? But internally, our plan is to make sure that fiscal has the idea of what those look like in October,
Okay.
right? And then, so if we have a plan, we'll be able to communicate everything really, really clearly in November. Like, if this doesn't pass, here's the cuts for this year, and here's the cuts for next year, right?
Okay.
And also, just so you know, we have a long-range facilities plan that within the next 3 or next 5 years, we're gonna do this with facilities. Whether it's close buildings or move things around or whatever. We're gonna have to have a couple different plans, one based on should a referendum fail, and one based on should a referendum, operational referendum pass.
Okay.
And we may have another one that says, we're looking for both operational and capital, and that's what this plan will look like, depending on what you guys want to do, right? And I will tell you that if you do both, it's gonna get really expensive pretty quickly.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so I don't know if that's a good ask or not, and we need to fund our operations first. And then worry about fixing buildings and doing that kind of stuff later, but that's my opinion.
Question. School closings,
Yes.
who and where?
So we are going to, if we don't pass a referendum, we are working on plans to close up to 3 different elementary schools. Okay. I can share with you that, we are taking a look at, what the maintenance needs are continuing, what those costs are, the daily costs of operations. We're looking at, future potential of that building, so how many seats are available, right? And a number of other factors that, we are going to bring to you, when we talk about the possible closure of LEAP and my recommendation to do that, regardless of any referendum or any other planning. Now I'm working with the parent group right now, because I think it's important for them to be able to share their thoughts, their discussion points about plans, right? So that you have it all at one spot. You don't have Jared's recommendation and then a bunch of angry parents for the next 5 meetings, right? I'm trying to do it together, even though we won't agree. You'll hear my recommendation, and you'll hear what they think is important, so that you have it all at one meeting. And I'm hoping that works. And Craig's been to all of those meetings so far, and it seems to be, a lot of questions that were still being asked, information being shared back and forth and whatnot, but you'll have all of that information to make a decision. And you'll understand what order we're thinking about closing elementaries in if we have to.
I wish I had that information today. I had one angry phone call.
Well, you and Sarah and I can sit down and have that discussion. We have it pretty much all together and wrapped up and have for, weeks now. So administratively, we do have that information.
I handle it good though. I settled the guy down.
I think what I heard out of the campaign trail, more or less, with constituents was a couple of different things. Yes, the duration of the referendum was a factor. It was less about the dollar amount, I thought. There were people that felt pinched by the city, by the, already, and that was a factor for them. Not understanding that of all of the different measures that we've taken to try to ease that burden on them as a school district. Sure, it would have been easier for us to just go right back to the community right after the 5-year referendum had expired and then just say, hey, we need another 5-year referendum and your mill rate's gonna drop by this much. Unfortunately, that's not what happened, because we would have been sitting on a huge fund balance, which would have been probably caught by the public and they would have said, hey, you guys don't need money right now, what are you talking about? So that's not the way that we approach things in the school district at that point. I think that I heard, that when we were talking about PRA and the facilities plan, that was like the game of telephone, like we were talking about earlier. Where like these rumors started flying throughout the community that, oh, we're looking at a mega school and that we're considering all of this other, building and yet I felt on a number of different occasions, I've had to like explain to people, no, we're trying to get a temperature from the community on what their appetite is for moving forward when it comes to our facilities. Because when we're sticking, what was it, to the tune of something of like $80 million over the course of 20 years into our buildings, maybe that's not the best use of your financial resources as a community. So there's a communication disconnect there. Then you and I have heard this. One of the biggest concerns people had were, what is the referendum for? They would keep saying that. What is the referendum for? Well, we would say operational costs. Many people don't know what they don't have no idea what that means, unfortunately. And that's just basically meaning, pay the current bills we have.
Right.
You know,
They had a hard time not, like, they think that it's for something new.
right,
And it's like, no, it's not. It's to pay staff. It's to,
right.
fix, do some fixes.
It is just to keep our balance in the black. Or not in the black, but stable. So some people even vocalized, oh, it's for wage increases. And that's the only reason why you're doing this. No, that's not. So there's that. And then there was general confusion about our current transparency around our budgets. Even though I like to think that we're as transparent as we possibly can be, I'd like to see if we can try to work together to try to figure out how to provide more of visibility and understanding to the community if we possibly can. We have to at least try, to make, and if it's not for the purposes of transparency necessarily, but also to demonstrate a mastery of our particular knowledge in that particular area, so that people feel comfortable knowing that we have a good team behind us that is looking at this information and conveying it to the public. I think that's probably going to be a helpful thing. So I think there's just a natural distrust out there, unfortunately, and it's a hurdle we're gonna all have to try to work to get over, somehow, I don't know if that summarizes some thoughts that people had.
General distrust, I would definitely agree.
Sure. I'm with people there. I got general mental distrust at times too.
Is there any way,
Looking at my
I'm just
taxes.
spitballing an idea out here, is there any way to create a page on the district homepage that is simply geared towards finances? And you could make some sort of pie chart or graph. And I understand that you use certain codes, right? Because you're in the line of business, but to like correlate that to lay terms somebody would use in their home, right? Like, I don't know if this is feasible, you would know better than I would. But just so that they could equate an operational referendum, like, hey, this is our shortfall right now. Okay, we need to pay the electric bill, guys, you know,
Right.
and I don't know if that's feasible.
I think I know what they're looking for. They just wanna know where it's coming from and they want it in layman's terms.
Right,
So much is coming from the state, so much is coming from your tax base, so much is coming from the federal government. And so much is coming from somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And here's the areas we're spending.
And then the breakout. Is what they wanna see is,
Mhm.
how much do our teachers cost us? How much does our staff cost us? How much does the upkeep of the buildings cost us? And then when you break it down a little furthermore, how much does that damn football program cost us? How much does that baseball program cost us? How much does this cost us? How much does that band program cost us? That's what they're looking for.
Yes,
And I think it would be real easy to throw it in those terms.
I
Right?
agree with you completely, and I think we actually share that every month. So it's just a matter of finding where is best to put the information. so
In the
people
Daily
can find
Times
it.
and let them read the Daily Times.
We
About
both,
400 people read the Daily Times, so I believe that.
Well, you may be right now, Sam,
Yeah.
about that, because I got rid of it too. Because they don't put anything like that in there anymore.
I'm just saying, Carl, there can be improvement on ensuring that they're reporting with accuracy, so I don't know if we really want any financial data provided to the Daily Times, and then they need to issue some sort of correction because they got the numbers incorrect.
That's also a great point.
I'm just saying.
Well,
and we can
where is our outlet for communications with the community? Where is it
Website,
then?
Facebook page.
Yeah, forgive my ignorance, Stuart. Back in the day, we used to do newsletters monthly, month. I don't know if we do we do a district newsletter?
It's digital, there was one released today, actually.
So.
Yeah, but
we
that,
did our
who reads
finances every
that?
month and on
Yeah.
that, so-
It's gotta be posted in
Everybody
front of
community,
them
right?
somewhere. Maybe Facebook would probably be there.
I hate to say it this way, but we're not connecting the dots, guys. Like, we did our analysis with PRA, of our community, and we have an aging in place community. They're not all on Facebook. They're just not. In order to reach those people, they have to receive something in print. They just do. And
That's why we did a lot of mailers around.
Yeah.
rough run.
I think when
Yeah,
people
the
get
younger people are
mailers,
not Facebook either.
no offense, but I think when people get mailers.
The younger people aren't on
you go to the
Facebook. No, I do it
message
mail.
box, it takes more, especially if they have to do literally any action to open it.
Right.
You know what I
So,
do with mailers? They go.
yeah, exactly.
If you get so much mail a day, you don't wanna look at
We're
mailers.
just gonna have to get out to local community events. You know, if we,
Increasing that presence, yeah.
yeah,
You know what we should do? We should have a subcommittee meeting, or not a subcommittee, but a joint committee meeting of fiscal planning with Melissa Lampy about communicating fiscal matters to the public. I'm not saying that we've never done anything like that, but
She's on right now. She can hear what you're saying.
Oh, there you go.
So,
you know,
if you're bringing two committees together, you might as well just do it at a board meeting.
right.
You know,
And Dan, I think Dan kept mentioning that they're just, and it's been a recurring theme for quite some time, you know, even before you were hired, that there's a general disconnect between the community that we still have to try to bridge somehow, and perhaps maybe that avenue is through the form of like an open house or open forum that has to be on a regular basis where we update and communicate with the public on the happenings of the district and that sort of thing. I do kind of like a page
that's what
on,
we started to do with the Birch briefings, and then we transitioned the Birch briefings into basically referendum, because that was the thing we were talking about,
right.
you know.
I do kind of like the idea of just a very detailed financial page on our website that would kind of break down the areas of our budget, that sort of thing, and we can try to spell out some of the things that we've done in the past and what the assumptions are in the budget moving forward, and our projections, and try to explain that, but also
you know, other conversations that are ongoing, specifically around PRA with the master facilities plan. And where the needs are for, building maintenance. We can kind of explain that in better detail. And then also explain, while we're talking about that, the regular operational needs are still not being met with our current budget situation. And I mean, they have to understand that those two are absolutely separate, but they do impact each other. Because if we, why would we want to keep shoveling money into a building that we're potentially, that's a money pit, or that's
Yeah, I mean, we can
inefficient to
easily,
operate any longer?
every year when we adopt the budget, right?
Right.
Sarah and her team put together a budget presentation information, right?
Mhm.
We could easily attach that to our webpage, right?
Right.
And say, here's where it is, because you know, really, unless we're putting monthly updates, like having a live feed to that, and they can truly get that by attending these meetings, right? Or seeing these meetings.
I
But-
wouldn't even, you know, I mean, not to, I don't mean to cut
But
you
we
off.
produce it,
Right.
I mean,
I would even go as far as to say, on that page, we can have a link to these videos of these meetings. So that people can understand what kind of level of discussions are being had. And they can get themselves caught up to speed. And I don't mean to jump the gun on discussion that is forthcoming to the board meeting in the future. But that, I think that those are valuable pieces that people have to, I mean, it can set the record straight quite a bit in the community for any misinformation that seems to be out there.
At a previous district, we did the monthly virtual.
Yeah.
But then we also, and I don't want to put any more work on anybody, but we also had allowed the community to request for a mailing one for those who don't have digital access or aren't computer people, right? So it was, and the list was short. I mean, it really was short.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But I mean, you know, it's up to
My
them.
opinion.
They requested just in case, you know, and like I said, it wasn't many, but.
The seats down there, I bet you $111,000 that we just approved that, or that the board probably will approve of. You're gonna have 30 to 40% of the people in this community saying, what the hell do they need that for? You know that better than I do.
I do know that, yeah.
Yeah, better than I do. So.
This is Charity. I just have two quick things. One, perhaps we could also, strengthen with having a new mayor in place, the relationship with the city, to see if they'll include us in that weekly email that goes out to the community, because it's a different kind of perhaps readership, from an overlap perspective. And then when it comes to one of the things that I've heard from folks were that we maybe didn't focus a lot on the parochial schools because it was a public school referendum, yet those are folks that are voting. And so making sure that they understand, what some of the implications are, and ensuring that they're hearing the same messages that those in our public schools are, might be something that'd be helpful for us to consider. And not to say that we haven't done it, but perhaps to amplify those efforts a little.
Charity's not wrong,
I agree with that.
So do I.
you know,
I like the idea of working with the new mayor. In the city.
yeah.
Geez, only if he has a
teacher.
connection here.
What?
So gee, only if he has a connection.
Right? No, I
School teacher.
think that's a discussion that we're going to be having too, so. But yeah, I'm, if it's an update that we have to have at, city council meetings, and we invite them in to have participation. Also, keep that open communication, that's a good thing. And
if we decide that, you know, one of the biggest communicating, one of the biggest things that we need to communicate is, you know, our financial well-being, or, you know, then that's what we need to do in those updates.
Any more discussion? Move to the next item.
Okay, next up is the CISA two contract. There's a contract and a memorandum of understanding loaded into board docs. This is done annually. And I didn't check the boxes here, but what we're proposing is renewing everything except dialogue with attorney. We don't feel like we need that for next year, but we're proposing renewing the Title III consortium. And then audiology, orientation and mobility, and blind and visually impaired students. Those are based on need. And there are some estimated costs attached. Those are just estimates. It depends on what student needs are and what the IEPs say. The Title III consortium, we get some money for Title III, that's for English learners. And by using the CISA to help manage those funds, we get quite a bit of extras, trainings and resources that we wouldn't have otherwise. The first document is just the basics, and then the second document had the estimated costs.
I will say that in the past, when we've utilized them for, like, for instance, audiology, we've had really good practitioners that helped with that. They're just really good. I'm sure that there are other ones. I haven't heard any complaints with the assistance that we have received from CISA 2 or anything like that. I've always heard decent reports, so I'm not really concerned about moving forward with this.
Any other discussion?
Not at the time.
Is this the one thing, just going back to the prior meeting, that we do not currently have a rep decided for?
No, Sam Owenhill's rep, and the one that we don't have decided was the WASB delegate that would go to the state convention and vote on resolutions.
Thank you, Jared, and thanks, Sam, for being the rep.
Yeah, what's next?
Move that to resolution. The next thing is the monthly reports. So in here, we list every month all of the checks that have been cut, all the detail for all the credit card purchases. The Amazon purchases are separated, and you can see what all of those are. And then there are two reports that are called variance reports. One is for Fund 10, which is the general fund. So that's the majority of everything that the district does. And then Fund 27 is for special education. And I thought if we look at the variance report, the way that this is laid out is if you look over here on the left, it says source. That's the 3-digit account number, and that tells us where the revenues are coming from. And then when we get to expenses, it's called the object. So this is the whole entire budget broken out by source and object. And then we have it, the budget amount, and then the year-to-date activity, the percentage spent, and then we have it to compare to the previous 2 years. So we can see where we are this year compared to the last 2 years in those same groupings. So this shows every single revenue that we get and then every single expense. for the year so far. So this shows right here what we're paying for teachers, what we're paying for aides, what we paid for administrators, maintenance, it's all broken out. Salaries are all in the 100s. All the employee benefits are in the 200s. The 300s are called purchase services. That includes anything that we're paying for service outside of the district. It has all of our utilities, postage, anything that we would hire someone to come in and do. So professional development, travel, contracted work on buildings, that's all included in here. And then some of the really big expenses in this section are what we pay for open enrolled tuition out, and then what we pay for vouchers. So those are the ones that are in the $3 million range. And transportation is in there. So those 300s add up to a big portion of the budget. The 400s are all supplies, and those are broken out by section. And then the 500s are capital equipment, insurance, and work comp are the 700s. And then 800, the transfer to Fund 27, that's a huge expense that comes out of the operating fund every year. That is the amount that we have to transfer to make Fund 27 zero at the end of the year. So we get a few revenues in Fund 27. If we looked at that report, we get IDEA, we get the state reimbursement, and then we get Medicaid. And otherwise, Fund 10 covers all of the costs for special education.
So Fund 27 is special education.
Yes. And then the balance sheet is at the bottom. And then we have that same report for Fund 27. And so that right now for revenue, we don't have a whole lot on there. We have whatever we've gotten for aid and what we've claimed for IDEA so far this year. And then expenses are below and they're broken out the same way. And percentage wise for Fund 10 and for Fund 27, we are running very close to what we have in the previous 2 years. And in the previous 2 years, we did end up at the end of the year a little bit better than what was projected. So hopefully that is going to be true for this year as well. And that would mean our deficit would be a little bit less than what was projected. Okay. Are there any questions about the reports themselves?
So I know a number of you are rather new to just even seeing these reports or even understanding the budgets and school finance. WASB has a really good resource. There's two resources. One is their School Finance 101 series. It's a series of webinars that you can go through. But even better than that, they have a really simple, easy to read, about that thick book for about $70 that I can order for each of you. It goes to the basics of fund accounting, the different funds that are available, what the budget cycle looks like, what the inputs are, revenues versus expenses. There's a whole bunch of information in that book. Would you guys like me to order a number of those and say, you know, here's some information for you, or?
I got one.
You got one?
He got part of it because he
Okay.
has the woofer now.
Okay, he's got the woofer part?
Yeah.
All right, he knows, all right. He's getting to speak woofer with us now.
Sure.
All right. Woofer is the financial accounting sequence numbers for those who may not know online or whatever.
I'm gonna assume I don't know everything about everything, so absolutely, I'd love to learn more.
Okay, I'll have Lynn order a number of those,
Yeah,
maybe one for every board member, and
I think every board member should be.
you know,
one of
at
them.
least, I mean, it's a good starting resource for you to dig in. And then the next, I shouldn't say the next best thing, because the best thing really is just talk to Sarah. But, you know, after reading that, talking to Sarah would be probably one of the next best steps, because she can help continue you on your path to learn more and more each year about that. But it really does take some time and really some resources to understand, because it is different. And the better you understand, the better you can help us relay that in layman's terms, because the last time I thought, about that differently, was a number of years ago.
It's not that hard to break it out.
No, it's not. And, actually, I have, at the last school district, we found a way to start breaking that out and making more sense. I'll share that with Sarah, of how we basically took the balance sheet and find numbers to make something sensible, and she may like it, she may not, but, it'll be an idea starter.
You can test it out on me, Carl, and when it starts making sense to me, you'll know that you're heading in the right direction.
As long as it balances.
Just remember, he's the one that wanted to take everybody's pinky.
No, I said we're not gonna do that.
Oh.
I said we're moving away from that barbaric pagan practice and we're moving towards a more civilized age where everyone gets to keep their pinkies in the boardroom.
Excellent. Sorry,
Well, no worries, no worries. You know, I mean, it's the.
All right, last thing we have is the future agenda planning, and we ended up switching a couple things. Like I mentioned earlier, we moved Chromebooks to May and we moved liability insurance to June because that wasn't quite ready yet, but it will be ready for June. I just had an update with them, so I'll bring that to the June meeting. The fire protection systems were already approved. Kevin brought that early too, so we don't have to do that, but we can talk budget again. We'll talk preliminary budget for next year and we can continue our referendum discussion. And I think that was the only other thing that I had. There may be a maintenance agreement for the HVAC. I'll have to double check with Kevin and see if we will need to have that on as well. But that's all that I know so far.
Thank you.
I'll have one
Appreciate it.
software renewal to bring back next month, the securely one, because that's just over 20.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
I see that we started operational referendum planning in January. Should we start having discussions about that sooner?
We started it well before January. I think you actually took, your discussion to a vote in December, to go to referendum. So, that was a December vote. And so I think we started really finalizing what that vote would look for in October at the full board level, right? And so, basically August, September for sure, maybe even July. I don't know how long, before, Sarah can really dig, into those models and start those models. First priority is, getting the budget done, but we may have a stall in what we know from the state on the budget, so she might be able to take on some of the other work, sooner until we get more money, or more, not more money, but more, information about money coming from the state.
So is it out of the question, to maybe have that part of that discussion in October when we're considering
Oh, yeah, definitely.
the budget, because I mean, it has to play into that conversation. It just does. I mean, like what basically, if I mean, when we have financial projections there at October as well, probably gonna wanna say, hey, what does it look like if we do have a referendum? What does it look like if we don't have a referendum?
Yeah, I would say before October for sure. I would love to have some direction on, are we talking like what level of referendum?
Yeah,
Like what's your comfort level with a mill rate increase? Those kinds of things I would like to have. This.
I think we should put it on for each month going forward, so we can keep refining until we get there, Craig.
okay,
Like I'm not saying that we need to hold off all discussions until that at this level. At the board level, though, we probably won't start seeing that level of this depth of discussion until October. Right?
okay.
But at this committee level, I would assume that every month now, we're gonna have discussion about that. I think we should also, because fiscal is where we talk about facilities, I think we should really start talking about facilities planning. I've got an idea of a board meeting date that I'd like to do a special meeting to restart our facilities process. I think that's like May 27th. But you and I can talk about that and get availability, questions out there to people, but I think that should be on the agenda too, is facilities planning updates, right? So that way we can hit those markers and have everything wrapped up by, end of September, October. What's that?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Probably.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, Greg.
Yeah.
Put that on next month's, right?
I'll add it to every month.
Every month, yeah, might as well.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about that every month.
Standing discussion on it.
Drop it down the spreadsheet.
People are gonna be very concerned about that, I'm sure. And we'll get a lot of phone calls.
You're gonna get a lot of phone calls next week when the letter goes out, and I'm not, I'm working really hard with, Craig and the administrative team. I'm not trying to put a letter out that is meant to, have people get their dander up. People will get their dander up because it's gonna, I think, shock some people to the level of discussions that we need to have, to get to, a 4.5 million, not next year, but the year after, and 4.5 million after that. And I think people were shocked, that we were doing even, nearly $1 million worth of cuts this year. And, because I said, regardless of a referendum, we need to at least cut 1.5 over 3 years. And we're taking this serious. We have to, I've seen colleagues in other districts who've gone through 2, 3, 4 referenda, right? And they're still not passing them, right? We don't have that level of runway. We have basically last April, and if we choose April again, that's it. We're out of money. And that's what the cuts we're doing. You guys just saw the projections, so. Can't say anything more, other than it's gotta be serious. I'm not trying to inflame people, I'm just trying to let them know. But we're gonna get calls.
I hate to ask this question. But how did we get to this point?
Well, I would say actually, we did a really good job as a school district. And I know we're at a devastating point now, but the number of school districts who fell before us and had to do things, I mean, you saw Fort went through this whole process and they did huge cuts, was it a year or 2 years ago? I can't remember. And they had failed a couple in a row. What had really put us in a good spot was we had a 5-year referendum that was in place. We had the ESSER dollars that came in, and we had a budget team over the last 5 years, 2 before me and the last 3, with a board that was really conservative, right? And we tried really hard to monitor costs, shave things, do some, moving things around. But we're all school districts, unless you're in a suburban area or a high urban growth area, right, where you are attracting families, everybody's getting hit by the low birth rate, right? That's why the universities close their 2-year university, their community universities, right? And they're thinking about closing other universities, right? They just don't have the number of students coming in. And when your revenue is dependent on how many head count you have, that's hurting.
We had declining enrollment. We've had years where we've had no increases to the revenue at all, or $50 a student. It just hasn't even come close to keeping up. We had a year of 8% inflation. CPI was 8% one year. It was
We understand that.
So increasing costs, revenues that stay the same, or
less.
I mean, what we
We had
actually
2
are
years
getting
of
as
zero.
revenue, it has been going down, yes, every year in the operational fund.
The way that they have school choice and voucher programs right now in the state is really not great for public education funding. Carl.
I can understand that real well.
And it's not so, it would be okay if the state would reimburse appropriately to the public district that has choice options available, but they are not appropriately funneling dollars down to the public education system to send to those alternative choices.
Yeah, they're actually putting it all on the local property tax. And so when people see the tax bill, they say, well, our school, it says public school tax, right? And they're like, our schools are charging so much, and it's like, well, it's not just your public schools, it's all the voucher schools, right, choice schools that we have as well. And that's their right, it's part of the funding, right? And so, but I don't think there's clarity around that, and I don't think that, when the state decided to have more students come on the roll, they didn't appropriately fund that many more students coming on the roll that were, out of the parents' pocket before, right? And they should have increased the amount of funding to schools, not just the public schools, that they were going to fund, and they didn't.
Well, the other part of that too is, the legislature involved with, the Wisconsin Parental Choice programs overlooked the disproportionate impact that would have on other, on districts, on, like, for instance, Watertown, happens to have a $4.5 million, approximately $4.5 million impact on our budget, through the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. And that accounts for about 8 to 9%, almost 10% of our, pushing 10% of our budget, and it will become 10% of our budget really quickly here. So it's other school districts don't have that. They're maybe at like 2%.
Right, because they don't have as many school choice schools.
Yeah.
We're one of the top in the state.
The second percentage wise, it's the second highest percentage of the budget.
We're in the second now, because we were fourth, now we're second.
It was as a percentage of the budget,
Oh, yeah.
not as a total dollar amount.
Okay. Oh, I see what I thought you meant like, because I think we were the fourth highest in the state.
Right,
Yeah.
I thought you were
that's
saying
right.
now we're the second. I'm like, well, how did that happen? But we're like fourth highest amount of dollars going to parental choice or voucher programming in the state because of the number of private schools we have available. Who choice, and we have some that don't even do choice. If they decided to do choice, that would also impact our budget.
I mean. I think the only real solution is to become a viable competitor in any case with. Other schools, with alternative schools. Everyone I talk to who's young says three things. They say, why would I ever send my kid to public school? My kid's gonna get indoctrinated. I would much rather send them to a private school where they're going to learn ethics and values that are actually aligned with what I believe, or I'm gonna homeschool them, so I make sure that happens. That's one thing I hear kind of split into two parts. And then the other thing that I hear is I'm an anti-natalist, because that's a big thing that, my sister has been taught about in school, and when she went to college, and I think it's funny actually that you're talking about how we have a low birth rate and how they're closing colleges, because I mean, I don't know that the values that are being taught in colleges are necessarily contributing towards higher birth rates. I actually think that they're discouraging it, if anything, unfortunately. So I think the only solution is, for any community, really, not just Watertown, but for any community, you have to become a place that people want to send their kids to. And right now, I think that many of the people, even in this room, but I think most of the people in Watertown would agree with me that there's a general attitude of there are better options for where to send my kid. And that's what I'm interested in. Again, when I talk about, like, people are looking for, why should I give more money to a system that I don't think is doing the best for kids in general?
So far, public schools in general, in the state of Wisconsin, we haven't reached that threshold yet of a we versus them mentality.
I don't think we should either.
No, but what I'm telling you is this, and the reason why, like, I believe if they were to go full voucher, we would, right? But because the cap is there, parents who are already selecting, I don't want a public school, right? There are private schools who still have their private students on a wait list to be into the choice program, right? So it really hasn't affected the public versus private discussion yet, because the cap has been in place. right? If the cap goes off, you're right, there are gonna be some people where there's gonna be some choice and they're gonna say, yeah, I can choose, public versus private, but now if you're in public school and you're worried about public school and where it's headed, and you go to a private school, you're gonna sit there and still wait for the voucher, because you're gonna be on the wait list. Because they still have, kids on the wait list that they've had for a while. So again, like I said, that doesn't really impact the ins out yet.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I actually think that if it just went, for a full straightforward school choice program,
They
I
did,
actually
then it
think that
would-
that might make things easier in a lot of ways. I think that, you know, as it stands, most people are saying, whatever, I'm gonna figure out how to incur the costs. I'm trying to move towards an option that I think works better. And I'm not saying, I mean, I went to Watertown High Schools, it was a while ago, but I went to Watertown High Schools. I think that many of the classes that I took, there was a lot of academic value to them, but I think that we've all seen the kind of, the dissolution of language, and we've seen the loss of cultural norms and things like that. And I think that a lot of people, whether right or wrong, they look to the school system at large, not just elementary, not just college, but the whole gamut. And they say, I feel like this is just not doing it. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a big discussion. I do think that there are a lot of different pieces at play, though. A lot of the things that Craig has talked about tonight, very valuable as well. But I think that especially in Watertown, people tend to vote or move along their value system. And I think that until we have a clear understanding of that, we're really not gonna get any traction.
You know, I think the last time I looked at it, I looked at some sort of a US Census, the 2020 US Census tapestry report for the Watertown Unified School District. And it indicated about approximately between 5,200 and 5,500 students being educated within the school district. We know that we're educating about 3,200 within the public school system.
Right.
So that leaves approximately 2,000 students that are being served by either homeschool, parochial school, or other districts. Then, you know, so I think it would still be fair to say that the majority of the kids living in the school district are being served by the school district.
By the public school, right?
And
honestly, I think those who are making their choices, have made their choices. There are waiting seats in our private schools here in town, right? And people do have choices that change, right? We get open enrollments, in and open enrollments out, as people make those choices, right? And so I'm saying that I think percentage wise, unless funding changes to allow more students to have as free of access as possible, we're gonna be stuck kind of in this little bit of a zone that is a little up, little down, little up, little down, right? If funding, in the way I have talked about it, because you guys know I'm a choice advocate. If we went full voucher for everybody and we paid a tax credit to families for each child, right? And let's say that tax credit was like $13,000 per kid, because that's truly 13.5 is what it truly costs to educate a kid. And that's why we're underwater, because it costs about that and we're not getting that, right? If I had a family of 4, that's a pretty good tax-free salary that I'm getting to homeschool my children. If it's my values that I want to impart, right? If I want to send them to a private school, right? Then I can take that money and go to the private school. If I want to be at the public school, I can take that money and go to the public school. Some people disagree with me on that because they're saying people who wanna and can afford to send them to private school, right? They have the money to do that, and this is just a regressive tax credit, right? And I won't get into that, but I just look at it as you know, it to be a democracy, having the right to educate kids equally is important to me.
Anybody else got anything to say?
Good. I think we can do action items. So
Oh, that's right. All right, so
We're
for
good?
action items, we have resolutions for Skyward, the light walls, the hardscape bid. Student fees will be on the agenda. Chromebook purchase, And I think, oh, and the CISA 2 contracts,
So we're good?
we're good.
Good thing.
I guess Greg, it's just me and you.
Yeah, yeah,
So I guess we can just adjourn then,
well,
Charity's online too.
yeah,
Pardon?
Charity's online.
Oh, Charity, that's right. I forget that
But we
she's
don't-
online.
we don't technically need a motion to adjourn.
No.
No, you could just say we're adjourned at, mark down the time and we're good.
Yeah, write down the time quick
51.
for me, please.